Another Just the News bombshell article. Our friend John Solomon was on the show yesterday. As they have the FBI, I feel like they're just like, you know what? You want to see some emails, man? You want to see some crazy stuff we found? They're like, look what we found from 2017. This is an email that came, or a message that we got with a full-on timeline from some pretty high-level people. I don't know, like the Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates saying in 2017, shut it down, quoted specifically on the probe against the Clintons and the Clinton Foundation in a very opportunistic time.
That's right. So this is a separate investigation that the FBI was looking into doing into the Clinton Foundation, as well as her time as Secretary of State. The allegations that were surrounding that kind of in the public sphere, where people were talking about some of the interesting people that were high donors to the Clinton Foundation, receiving meetings or maybe other things, maybe an appointment, things of that nature, while she was Secretary of State. And there was even a book about it, Clinton Cash.
Yeah.
And so this would have been during the Obama administration while she was Secretary of State, what they would have been looking into.
But it was actually during, I guess, the Trump administration.
Well, so it began, the FBI started looking into this actually in 2015.
Gotcha.
So the tail end of the Obama administration is when they started looking at this. They started working towards it. And the detail here is remarkable. This is a timeline that was written by a DOJ attorney assigned to the FBI under James Comey. And there's a lot of redactions of individual names. Mainly, it appears to be U.S. attorneys, people that work in those offices or in the FBI field offices. But main names you see are people like Andrew McCabe, who was the Deputy Director of the FBI. They were putting up roadblocks at every corner to the field workers that really wanted. These FBI agents had information. They had done preliminary investigations, and they were being told, as Logan said, to shut down this investigation into alleged corruption at the Clinton Foundation and from former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. We start to find out that a lot of activity happens where the DOJ and the FBI are all having meetings, they're having video calls, one of which was held by Deputy Director Andrew McCabe in February of 2016. And so this was their first stuff that started was in August or July of 2015. So before we were really even in the election cycle,
so in the Obama
they're looking
era,
into this.
They're starting to look into this.
That's right.
So maybe this is when the FBI was still kind of doing their job.
So at least the field agents.
Yeah.
Then it starts going up. Deputy Director McCabe led this meeting. It was a secure video teleconference call with a lot of individuals from the Criminal Enforcement Division, the Washington field office, New York field office. And he said that, we need to make sure there are no overt investigative steps to be taken on the Clinton Foundation investigation without his approval. So already out of Washington, the deputy director is saying, you can't do anything until I give you approval of a step of an investigation. This is now 7 months after they've already started working on this. It continues on. Then it gets up to the Deputy Attorney General in March of that year, about a month later. She orders the Eastern District of Arkansas U.S. Attorney's Office shut it down. They don't want to see this happening.
Some people understand also maybe they don't. The Arkansas office specifically because that's where the foundation was.
Exactly. Well, that's where the Clintons are from. They have a lot of ties there. Now, most of the operations were out of New York, which is why New York field office was involved. But Little Rock, New York, and Washington field offices all independently were looking into this.
Not working together.
That's right.
Sense, at least as far as we know.
So then we learned she tells them to shut it down. They didn't really. The FBI agents, because we're still looking at, we're going over stuff. Then they started telling them, listen, you have no overt investigative action can take place until authorized by the deputy director. Then there were people that were pushing back, saying, no, we're frustrated. Like, we've got stuff here. There was an allegation. You're just taking it from that one book. The field office says, no, we have confidential human sources. We have our own investigative stuff. Yes, we did use some open source things when we looked at that, but we've done work on this. Still told to shut it down.
When all this started coming out, it started feeling very much like 2016, where you're going to have a lot of words, you're going to have a lot of things that go after Hillary Clinton, then nothing's going to happen. The difference is you have a very different FBI. You have a very different administration right now. they are releasing documents that could have been released for decades at this point now, or almost a decade. Almost a decade, they could have released these documents showing this. So at least you have an administration, you have Kash Patel in that office who is at least willing to take this first step of saying, okay, we're going to show you the evidence. Now, let's see where we can go with it.
Well, and when you think about what a chaotic time it was at the beginning of that first administration of President Trump and how they effectively were able to hamstring his entire administration with the Mueller probe, with an impeachment, they were able to hide the ball over here by forcing these hoaxes on the administration to hamper any sort of these type of things to move forward. And then 2020 happens and Joe Biden is able to fill the Department of Justice with his loyalists that were certainly not going to do that. So you have to consider what happened during the first time frame. It's not like all of a sudden the DOJ was ripe for reform and the FBI was ripe for reform. It was a fraught time.
Back in February of 2020, somebody tweeted this week, and I was pleased to see that somebody had Google and somebody had a memory. But back in February of 2020, we declassified a whole bunch of information. And back then, we proved that Adam Schiff played politics, manipulated the truth, lied to the American people, all for political gain. And we proved that through declassifying documents showing his attacks on Mike Flynn were totally phony and fake. And what should have happened in February of 2020 is Bill Barr, who is the Attorney General, should have immediately taken that, and he should have indicted Adam Schiff. The evidence is there of what Adam Schiff did and the manipulation. I think as a politician, as the chairman of the Intelligence Committee, someone who goes on TV and says, trust me, I know what I'm talking about, but I can't tell you because it's intel. He was lying. We now know he was lying. And I think it's disgraceful that he was allowed to continue without facing consequences. I hope that changes. I think that he still needs to be held to account for it. The evidence is there. And this week, somebody reminded the world that we knew about this in February of 2020. The Biden team didn't do anything about it. And so now it's high time that the Department of Justice go after this. One thing that I do know is my friend Kash Patel, who is focused on transparency and is doing a great job, is someone who understands all of the manipulation of Russiagate. And so I hope that Kash as well is looking at the evidence and talking to the Department of Justice, because it's the Department of Justice that has to file the indictments, not the FBI. And I believe that it's high time that Adam Schiff face these consequences. The evidence is there for anyone to look at. Transparency is not political. We just uncovered the truth. And we now know that Adam Schiff completely was lying and manipulating and utilizing the intelligence to go after a person who was about to become the national security advisor for the United States of America. It's really disgraceful what he did.